If any people have the right to label themselves victims, it's American blacks. First we had slavery, then state-required segregation, then continuing racial discrimination. But the author of Blacklash argues that this focus on the past is terrible for blacks. Deneen Borealis says blacks should stand up against destructive, progressive tyrants who promote victimhood. Destructive, progressive tyrants?
Progressive policies are harming the black community. Our failing public schools, our unemployment is over 13%, over 40% among young black individuals.
Yeah, they're victims.
Stand up to these progressive policies that are not working. And I don't see them as victims. They're not victims. And that's the narrative that the left uses all the time to promote their big government agenda. They don't want to promote liberty, personal responsibility. They promote bigger government. They think government is the answer.
You went to the NAACP annual meeting this summer. You heard a lot about victimhood.
Throughout the entire meeting.
Every speech?
Well, listen, what I heard when I was there, it was an us versus them mentality. I didn't hear any solutions. I heard a lot of victimization, a lot of race card. The voter ID is racist. It's us versus them. If you were black, you don't stand a chance.
And at that same NAACP conference where you were not allowed to speak, I should point out, Al Sharpton mocked people who say the election of President Obama means that America's past racism.
Those that were saying that never was profiled in a department store. Those that were saying that was never pulled over on a highway.
He has a point. A black man is more likely to be pulled over on the highway, profiled.
Racism is not prevalent across our country. There are idiots out there who may be racist, but clearly, look at individuals in politics, in business, sports, entertainment, myself. And I implore all freedom-loving Americans to stand up and push back on this narrative. Don't be afraid to be called a racist or a sellout, all the different names that I'm called. If you believe in liberty and you want to advance our country forward, I implore all Americans to speak out.
Let's talk about the killing of Trayvon Martin. The president said, this could have been my son. Could have been his son.
And he injected himself into this and made it about a racial issue when, in fact, it had nothing to do about race.
We don't know it had nothing to do about race.
Well, the FBI investigation concluded that, and Zimmerman was not convicted. And so clearly it wasn't about race, but unfortunately early on we had people who promoted it about race, and that's what domineered the headlines.
And a producer at NBC, surprise, surprise, clearly had black victimhood in mind when he edited Zimmerman's call to 911. Here's the actual call.
This guy looks like he's up to no good, or he's on drugs or something. It's raining and he's just walking around looking about.
Okay, and this guy, is he white, black, or Hispanic?
He looks black.
The editor took out the dispatcher asking, is he white, black, Hispanic, which left just this.
This guy looks like he's up to no good. He looks black.
Now look, in television, you're looking to save time. We always make edits. Maybe he was just looking to save time.
That was just very inappropriate and the wrong thing to do. And anything about race is emotional, and it drives the headlines. And early on with this case, with this investigation, it was always about race when, in fact, it wasn't.
Haven't blacks been victims in America?
Years ago, John, black individuals did not have access to education, housing, jobs. Times have changed, and we don't live in that era anymore.
All right, let's talk about affirmative action. Given America's history of discrimination, it seems reasonable to me that whites should try to make amends, try to give a break to minorities who maybe didn't have the breaks that I had. So what's wrong with that? And Deneen, before you answer, let's bring in a white person who opposes affirmative action, Jennifer Gratz. She was denied admission to the University of Michigan, you say, because you are white. How do you know it was because of your race?
Well, the University of Michigan and universities across the country are very proud of the fact that they use race in admissions to help some people and to hurt others. At the University of Michigan, when I applied...
Well, they're not proud they hurt others. They just say they help some.
Yes. When I applied to the University of Michigan, they had a point system in place. You needed 100 points to be accepted. A perfect ACT or SAT score earned an applicant 12 points. An outstanding essay earned an applicant 1 point. If you were Black, Hispanic, or Native American and applying to the University of Michigan, you were automatically awarded 20 points, more than a perfect ACT or SAT score. So it was very obvious how much of a factor race played.
And so you sued over this and took it all the way to the Supreme Court, and you won.
I did.
But affirmative action still lives. Most colleges.
Yes, it was a mixed decision where the Supreme Court said that race preferences could not be used in a mechanical way, so there could not be a point system anymore, but race still could be used as a factor for about another 25 years.
If I get a job applicant, a white and a black, and they are equal, I probably would pick the black person, figuring this person had maybe to overcome something in the past. What's wrong with that?
Well, I think that our decision making should be colorblind. I think that first of all, the chances of there being...
What about the history of discrimination and special privileges for us whites?
Well, I don't know of any special privileges that I have right now. There are 3 unintended victims of these policies. There are the people who get a preference to get into college and don't need it, and so or to get a job and don't need it, and their credentials are then questioned.
Let's talk about that, because you sent us this video of a conversation with a 16-year-old girl. She had top grades, perfect SAT scores, and she's against affirmative action.
This causes racial tension and racial division, because then the white people are going to say, oh, but we don't get preferences, we don't get advantages, and so they're going to resent the minorities. I'm going to get extra points because of what I look like. And I resent that, because I don't want people looking at me and saying, well, maybe she just got in because of what she looks like and not because she's qualified.
And I've heard that before, that how can you ever trust that this doctor deserves to be a doctor?
Mm-hmm. If these policies didn't exist, we would know that the people who are in positions that hold our life in their hand are there because of their merit.
The other victims, you say, are people who get the preferences and then don't do well in school.
Correct. People who are qualified to get into a maybe second-tier school then are bumped up because of preferential treatment, and they get into a top-tier school, and then they don't do well, and they end up with a considerable amount of debt and student loans, and oftentimes they drop out. So now they've got debt, they don't have a degree, and they feel horrible. They don't feel successful, and we would be much better off having kids go where they're prepared to go, where their qualifications say that they are ready to go, and graduate and get a degree and feel like a success.
And the third category is this message of victimhood.
Yes, the race hustlers of the world, the Jesse Jacksons, the Al Sharptons.
If you're told a victim, if you're told that you're a victim, you start to act like a victim.
Exactly, right. Exactly. You act like a victim, you become a victim, and it becomes an us versus them type of mentality, which I know you talked about earlier.
And to raise people's consciousness about affirmative action, I once ran a racist bake sale.
Cupcakes for sale.
My price list said Asians had to pay $1.50, whites $1, Latinos and blacks just 50 cents.
That's not right.
You got to be out of your goddamn mind. Boy, close down.
That's stereotyping.
It is stereotyping.
That's not right.
But it is the same principle, right?
Well, you got their attention. But let me just give you a quick example.
And I should say, once we had a conversation, people were saying, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way.
Frederick Douglass was born a slave. He escaped slavery. He's self-educated. He was involved in politics. He was an advisor to presidents. He disdained affirmative action and special treatment. And so if he is someone that can do it and be successful, anyone can with hard work.
The bake sales, I think that they highlight the hypocrisy. You can't be for race preferences in college admissions, public contracting, public jobs, and then call what you did outrageous.